Raiders reveal Davante Adams trade cost, Cowboys should shoot their shot. The Las Vegas Raiders revealed what a Davante Adams trade would cost interested teams, and the Dallas Cowboys need to shoot their shot. The Dallas Cowboys could use a boost at wide receiver, with a lack of experience behind CeeDee Lamb showing on the field. Outside of Lamb, the Cowboys' most consistent targets have been tight end Jake Ferguson and fullback Hunter Luepke. If the Cowboys could add another threat opposite Lamb, it would open up the passing game in a much-needed way. One option that is emerging is Las Vegas Raiders wide receiver Davante Adams. The three-time All-Pro pass catcher is reportedly being shopped by the Raiders, per Vincent Bonsignori of the Las Vegas Review-Journal. He writes the team is growing open to the possibility of trading Adams, and the club has begun reaching out to teams to gauge interest in the veteran wide receiver. But what would it cost Dallas to potentially make the move? According to ESPN's Adam Schefter, the Raiders' asking price for Adams is a package that would include a second-round pick and additional compensation. The Cowboys and Raiders are no strangers to working out a trade for a star wide receiver. In October 2019, the Cowboys gave up a first-round pick to acquire Amari Cooper. Now, 5 years later, could the two teams work out another deal at a lower price? Adams previously played for Mike McCarthy, who was head coach of the Green Bay Packers when the team drafted him in 2014. During his time under McCarthy, Adams had one 1,000-yard season and 3 years with double-digit touchdowns. Whether a trade for Adams ultimately works out remains to be seen, but if Jerry Jones and company don't make a call, they are doing themselves and Dak Prescott a disservice. All in, right? Former Commanders pass rusher signs with division rival. The former Washington Commanders pass rusher signed with NFC East rival Dallas Cowboys. The Washington Commanders' NFC South rival, the Dallas Cowboys, is being hit with the injury bug. Their defensive end position is seeing injuries to Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence, two highly productive pass rushers. In light of the injuries, the Cowboys signed former Commanders pass rusher K.J. Henry to their active roster on Wednesday, according to ESPN's Jeremy Fowler. The former Washington player was previously on the Cincinnati Bengals practice squad, waiting for a call-up. Henry was a fifth-round pick by the Commanders in the 2023 NFL Draft and now lands on an active roster after appearing in 2 games for Cincinnati this season. The Clemson product started 3 games in 10 appearances for the Commanders in 2023, tallying 1.5 sacks. The former Clemson standout brings a mix of youth and experience to the mix, having played in 10 games during his first 2 NFL seasons, 3 starts, finishing the 2023 season with 19 combined tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 2 pass breakups and 1.5 sacks. An All-ACC talent for the Tigers, Henry is looking to establish himself at the professional level and could get an opportunity to begin doing so for the Cowboys as early as Week 5 against the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Dallas Cowboys wrote in a release. With his third team in 2 years, Henry will have a legitimate opportunity to prove himself for a Cowboys team that has been mediocre this season. The 6'4", 255-pound defensive end will look to patch a serious hole within the team, which will also happen to be a long-term audition for an improved role. Henry signed a 2-year deal, too, giving him some contract security as he provides Dallas with immediate injury relief. In 5 years with Clemson, including a national title as a freshman, though he did redshirt that season, Henry tallied 123 tackles, 30 tackles for loss and 13.5 sacks. Stick with Commander Game Day and the Locked On Commanders podcast for more free coverage of the Washington Commanders throughout the 2024 season. Blockbuster trade proposal sends Davante Adams to Cowboys for QB and pick. The Las Vegas Raiders' good feelings stemming from their Week 4 win over the Cleveland Browns have quickly dissipated. Star wide receiver Davante Adams has requested a trade and it appears the team could be willing to grant his request. There should be no shortage of teams around the NFL that are interested in Adams, but according to an October 1st ex-post from ESPN's Adam Schefter, the Raiders are looking for a second-round pick and more. That asking price will only be palatable to contending teams. Christopher Knox of Bleacher Report pitched a trade that would send Adams to the Dallas Cowboys for quarterback Trey Lance and a conditional second-round pick. In this hypothetical scenario, the threshold for flipping a conditional second-round pick into a first might be high, Ballantyne wrote in an October 1st column. Dallas has shown that it can get to the playoffs. Winning multiple postseason games is now the goal, making an appearance in the NFC title game a sensible condition for the first-round pivot. To sweeten the deal, Dallas could include third-string quarterback Trey Lance. For the Raiders, the Cowboys make sense as a trade partner as they'd get Adams out of the AFC. Lance doesn't sweeten the pot much as he still hasn't shown he can be a starting quarterback in the NFL. Will Raiders actually trade Davante Adams? At this point, there's really no reason for the Raiders to keep Adams. Even if they can earn a wild card playoff spot, they aren't competing for a Super Bowl with Gardner Minshew at quarterback. Adams' salary cap hit jumps to $44.1 million next season, so the Raiders were likely going to move on from him after the season. If they were to trade him in the offseason, his value would likely be lower. In fact, the longer the team waits, the lower his value will be. The Raiders should be highly motivated to get a deal done quickly. They don't need Adams to be a distraction. He's a very good player who has broken 1,000 receiving yards for the team in back-to-back seasons, but a young rebuilding team doesn't have a need for a wide receiver who will be 32 in December. A failed experiment. When the Raiders traded for Adams during the 2022 offseason, they were coming off a playoff berth and had just hired Josh McDaniels as head coach. Quarterback Derek Carr was coming off a strong season, and the hope was that reuniting him with Adams would be a recipe for success. That wasn't the case. The Raiders won 6 games in Adams' first season, and the team decided to release Carr. They decided to sign Jimmy Garoppolo to be the starting quarterback, which turned out to be a disaster. Las Vegas could only muster 8 wins last season. This season hasn't gone much better as the team is 2-2 and was recently blown out by the Carolina Panthers. Adams didn't suit up against the Browns in Week 4 and the Raiders won, which shows they don't need the wide receiver to win. This was a failed experiment from the beginning, and it's best for the Raiders to cut their losses right now. It should be clear by now that any star player who wants a trade or hits the free agent market will inevitably be tied to the Cowboys. Jerry Jones wouldn't have it any other way. It's on brand. But precious few of these speculative pairings come to fruition. Adams is simply the latest player to have his name bandied about when it comes to the Cowboys.